it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. Here's a look at the NECA Toys ACDC Retro Cloth Bon Scott. One of the most influential frontmen of all time, Bon Scott's high-voltage vocals and rock and roll lifestyle set the bar for a generation of aspiring musicians. While he can't make the claim of being the first frontman to the band ACDC, that would have gone to Dave Evans. Bon Scott, though, still manages to leave a very long legacy behind, and hard shoes to fill when Brian Johnson took over for vocals for him. I was always a bigger fan of Brian Johnson. I think it was more so just the fact that ACDC, at the time that I was listening to the band the most, Brian Johnson was the one that was providing the vocals to it. And it wasn't, in fact, until I actually had gone back and listened to some of their older stuff that I started to really like Bon Scott's work as well. Before we get a closer look, though, at the retro cloth release here of Bon Scott, let me first also thank the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide this sample. We could have a look at this review. Bon Scott is available right now in retail stores and online, should you guys be interested to pick this one up for yourself. Grabbing the tape measure, though, let's measure off first in inches, providing the tape measure isn't going to ravel up on me. Bon Scott, in this case, stands about 7.5 inches in height, or the figure is going to be about 19.5 centimeters tall. For Scott's accessories, the figure comes included to the right with a swapped out head, though to the figure's left, the figure comes included with a microphone. The microphone does have a wire that's already attached to the end of it, and it's not removable. I suppose you could cut it if you want to, and then the wire really doesn't attach to anything anyways. The wire, though, does seem like you'd be able to bend it, at least from the times that I'm bending it right now. It looks to be like it's keeping its shape and form. You can take the microphone. I guess before we do that, you get a closer look at what the microphone looks like. Pretty nicely detailed. It doesn't look like it has a whole lot of paint going for it, mostly just the silver, but does fit into the figure's hands. I think I would have it probably on this side of the figure's hands, primarily also for the fact that this hand, you can see that the fingers are molded right to the thumb. So it's going to be a little bit easier, in fact, to actually take the microphone and fit into this hand. Or if you wanted to, obviously you could just run the wire straight through the hand this way, if you didn't want to have to pry the fingers away. And then just, again, get the wire in there, slide it all the way down, and put the microphone then into Scott's hands. And you can have it up to his face like that. Now, for the head sculpt, sticking with just the straight head sculpt that we get out of the packaging, I do think the likeness is quite there. NECA has done a great job. I mean, obviously, when it comes to these retro cloth figures, tend to be the case that you get more smaller framed bodies. And you tend to sometimes have larger heads. And I think in a case also of Bon Scott, he generally had a large head and he was a pretty thin frame. So it translates pretty well here for a retro cloth release. You get some nice tattoos there on the sides of his arms. I don't want to get away from this head too quickly, though. Head sculpt wise, like I said, it's pretty good. I'm really happy with how this one turned out. Really long hair. I mean, it's all molded to his face, so you really wouldn't be able to get much in the way of posability. You can rotate it back and forth only just by a little bit. You can also move it up and down also as well, but that's just a straight smiling Scott face. If, though, you prefer to have Bon Scott more in a singing pose, then of course then you get this head sculpt here as well. This one does have very much the visibly now open mouth, which now does show a sculpted tongue that's painted well on the inside there as well. Hair looks to be about the same between the two. It doesn't look like anything really does change. And while I did think that there was going to be a hard time to remove the head, I'm actually just going to remove the mic for right now. Let's put that to the side. Well, I did think there may have been a problem with removing the head because there's likely a lot of times where you're going to be getting ball joints. Ball joints don't always work so well when it comes to removing heads, that sometimes they do have to heat the heads first with like a hairdryer, or sometimes even submerge them in hot water. But not the case this time around. Actually, removing the head for Bon Scott was actually quite easy. I just held on to the torso like this. One last time to look at the head sculpt before we remove things. Okay. Go ahead and hold on to the torso and just sort of wiggle it back and forth till finally you remove it from the post. And even though it is more of a joystick ball joint, I mean, it still manages to free itself pretty easy, and I didn't even have to heat it once. Then just swap it out with the other head sculpt, which I actually prefer between the two. Just pop that in place and just, again, show you guys the difference between the two. I personally, again, like the more singing face sculpt myself. And again, like popping it back in place didn't seem to have any problems whatsoever. For the rest of his outfits, he does have just underneath this a black t-shirt, and then over top of that he has himself a ripped sleeve jean jacket. The jean jacket actually does look pretty good. It looks very similar to the kind of jean jacket we got with the Russ Thorn release, the Slumber Party Massacre. Not that I would want to be mixing ACDC and Slumber Party Massacre, but I guess those could be two of my favorite things. Does have some nice seam work that they added in there as well. Like with denim, you do have yourself like that orange stitching that they stitched on the back and stitched along the bottom. He's also got the stitching there also in his pockets also as well. He does also have a belt, so you can see there as well. It looks to be a real functioning belt also, so you'd probably be able to unfasten this. I don't really know why you'd want to unfasten this. And it looks to be like the front of his denim jeans probably are Velcroed. Yeah, they seem to be Velcroed inside. Now, again, he does have the tattoos. I think the tattoos are close enough to the ones that he actually has in real life. You can see he's got one there further up on his bicep, one further down on his forearm, and he's also got a couple of tattoos also this as well. He's got also one on the inside. I just want to make sure I didn't miss that so you guys can see what that looks like. Pretty well printed. I wouldn't say necessarily painted. Pretty well printed from the folks over at NECA. Again, like when it comes to his body, his arms are naturally very thin, so it's going to make his hands look even a little bit more bigger than normal. And again, he's very thin when it comes to the frame of his body. When it comes to his shoes, you can see the sculpting of the shoes are well painted too. You've got the undersoles there done in black, nice sort of more of a brown coloring, and they've also added some orange for his laces. One thing that's good about being this newer release retro cloth figure is that Bon Scott does possess at least an ankle pivot, something that the earlier retro cloth figures wouldn't be able to say that they had. For the articulation, though, on Bon Scott, his head is first on a ball joint. And even though it is on a ball joint, you're really going to be limited when it comes to rotating his head back and forth, just because he's got so much sculpting of hair. Head does look up, head does look down, and it does also rock back and forth, but only just by a little bit. The arms, because they are designed the way that they are, first of all, I want to say like the joints on the shoulders were really tight, and they're still really tight for me. For all intents and purposes, I would normally be able to have said I could get this guy at 90 degrees. That usually is the case. But just with my shoulders at least, not on mine, but the figure of Scott, I can't move the arms out that far, and I really don't want to push any further than what they're doing right now. So I may have to go and heat these again, see if I can actually soften up the joints just a little bit. Either way, though, you can rotate the arms all the way around. The figure of Bon also does have a rotation in his bicep, and he does also have a double hinge in his elbow with hands that rotate all the way around and a hinge back and forth there as well. Upper torso is on a ball joint. The legs do split out, both sides split out. Bring the legs forward. You can, of course, bring the legs back. He has a swivel at the top of the thigh. I think it's only a single hinge. It almost kind of feels like there's a joint right there. I think there is a joint right there. He should have a double hinge on the knees, but again, like on this figure, for some reason, he's very, very tight. And again, that's okay. I would much rather tight joints on figures than overly loose joints. Where we looked at the fact he does have an ankle rocker up and down this way, and he does also hinge. Just bring up the legs so you can actually see. He does have a hinge right there also as well, so you can hinge those ankles back and forth. Nice looking figure. Nice looking figure. I like how this one did turn out. Doesn't have much really in the way of accessories. I mean, other than just his mic and then a swapped out now head that I'm going to have to put back into the plastic tray. Did you guys notice, by the way, at the beginning of this video when I was unpacking this guy, how hard it was to remove these heads from the tray? Ouch. Gonna have to put this one back in the tray. I'm gonna stick with this head sculpt for right now. And short of, again, only just then taking his microphone, gonna put that also into his hand. Yeah, again, I'm really nice with how this one turned out. Again, like, I don't know if they're ever planning to do any other ACDC characters. I mean, Angus, we are getting an Angus. Will be looking, in fact, at Angus in an upcoming review. But I hope at some point we are going to get ourselves a Brian Johnson. I mean, for me, when I was really liking ACDC and still continue to listen to ACDC to this day, my daughter, I've gotten her into listening to ACDC and watching ACDC music videos. For me, I was always more Brian Johnson, but still, I can certainly understand why people liked Bon Scott so much. His voice still resonates to this day, and to go back and listen to the older stuff that he was doing, great stuff that he was projecting with those vocals of his. At some point, though, while we did get ourselves a really nice looking Bon Scott, I hope at some point NECA Toys considers to do more frontman for ACDC. Maybe not necessarily Dave Evans, but at the very least, I hope we do get ourselves a Brian Johnson retro cloth release. Oh yes. Here's hoping this isn't going to divide the viewers, but let me know down below in the comments section, please, if you are a fan of ACDC, who do you prefer to be the frontman of the band? Bon Scott, like the retro cloth release we got here from NECA Toys, or do you prefer Brian Johnson? I think probably the bigger question to be asking is, when were you first introduced to the band? Because that really does dictate who you're more familiar or who you enjoy a little bit more. For me, early 90s. Early to mid 90s was really when I was heavy into ACDC. For me, it was always more Brian Johnson. It wasn't until later that I went back and listened to a lot more of Bon Scott's stuff that I really did appreciate why he was such a well-renowned frontman for a band. But who do you prefer more, though, really, when it's all said and done? I'm interested to see how it's going to be divided up down below. Are we going to be more heavily Bon Scott fans? Or are we going to be more heavily Brian Johnson fans? I think, again, like the demographic will really dictate what frontman you prefer a little bit more. When it certainly comes to this design, I think that they've handled, NECA Toys that is, has handled a really nice looking Bon Scott release. I do appreciate the fact that they took the time not only to give him one head sculpt sculpted, but actually two. And while the figure doesn't really have much in the way of accessories other than just a mic, but that's really all you really need for a frontman when it's all said and done. I guess they probably could have given him a mic stand, but I think most of the times he's usually carrying around the mic in his hands. I think it just makes better sense. At least they included a wire. The wire is a little on the longer side, and truth be told, it doesn't really attach to anything, but again, it does add a little bit more realism than him just having a detached mic. Where's he getting the power for that mic? It's better that they actually attached a wire to the end of it. But what do you guys think of the figure? Let me know down below in the comments section. And again, I'll be really interested to see who likes Brian Johnson more, who likes Bon Scott more. Let me know down below in the comments section. Once again, a big thank you to the folks over at NECA Toys. They did provide this sample of the retro cloth ACDC frontman singer Bon Scott. We got to look at this review. I may have already tipped my hat, but we are going to also be looking at ACDC Angus Young. Oh, looking forward to that one. If you are a fan of ACDC, make sure you're coming back to the channel to watch that review of that. But also, if you enjoyed the video that you just finished watching, why not hit it with a like? If you guys are loving the content you're seeing and you are new here, hey, come on in. First of all, let me know down below what frontman you prefer, but if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and that you're also turning on bell notification. There's going to be a lot more NECA reviews coming your way. So as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.